The Authority Hangout. Conversations with the top SEOs, community managers, content marketers, and thought leaders in the digital marketing space. Join us to learn more about optimizing your online presence and growing your brand's authority. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Authority Hangout. I'm Michelle Stinson Ross, and I am part of the Authority Labs team. Today, we are going to be discussing all things retargeting for both PPC and social. And I'm going to toss it over to my colleague and sometimes partner in crime, Melissa Fach, who is going to be moderating this discussion.
Okay, hey everybody. So we are super excited to have Rachel and Sean, and I want to start off, let's start with Rachel. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Hi everybody, Rachel Malone-Olson here, Social Account Manager over at aimClear, located headquarters in Duluth, Minnesota, with offices in St. Paul. I primarily work on paid social, specializing in Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I've been here for about a year. Prior to that, I worked at an ad agency in Argentina for about 2.5 years. So everything paid social is my bread and butter, and excited to be here.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Sean.
Yep, my name's Sean Dolan. I'm the president of PushFire. We're a digital advertising agency out here in Houston. We work with medium to enterprise clients. Our strengths are in AdWords, Facebook, and Bing remarketing. I'm a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I like smoking meat, and I run as a hobby.
Yes.
So I'm a glutton for punishment.
Great. Well, actually, the whole idea behind this hangout was Sean's session at PubCon Austin on retargeting. Yeah. And retargeting is a difficult thing for many businesses to understand. So that's our topic today, is retargeting in PPC and in social media. So why don't we start with PPC? Sean, can you give us a brief overview of what retargeting it is and how businesses can use it?
Sure. So the definition I've kind of pulled together from various definitions I've found of remarketing, retargeting, remessaging. The one I've kind of narrowed down to is advertising that engages a customer prospect with custom messaging based on previously acquired information. So there's 3 parts to that. You know, it's re-engagement. So it's not the first interaction you've had with this person. And because it's the second interaction, you have some information that you've previously acquired, you're able to customize your messaging for that person. So when we talk about, you know, PPC or non-social, if I just take on that piece, then we're talking about you know, Google and Bing, for instance. Google having search and display, and Bing having just search for now is the only remarketing they currently offer. But with Google Display, you're looking at like 1 trillion, you know, impressions a month. You're looking at tons of websites that are a part of the Google Display network that you can show your ads on, these customized ads to people that you've predetermined and created into these specific lists based on behavior. And then on the search side, you've got RLSA, which basically takes remarketing lists that you've defined from behavior, overlaid with keywords that they searched. So if you're like Pittsburgh Steelers, Heinz Field is also a wedding venue, but they can't compete in the wedding venue space, even in Pittsburgh, because it's so pricey and not everyone wants to have their wedding there. But if you remarket, you have a remarketing group set up for people that have been to Steelers.com, and within that group searches wedding venues, your conversions are going to go, or your conversion rates go up because you're only targeting to someone that you've acquired some sort of information about already.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. And Rachel, can you explain to us how it works with PPC, and is it any, you know, what are the differences?
Sure, absolutely. And Sean did a great job of kind of explaining the PPC side and kind of the basis of retargeting, and applying that to the social side really within Facebook and Twitter is kind of the same function. These people have already interacted with some form of your presence, whether it be your website, whether they've sent you an email address, you have some sort of their handle, however you can contact them, they've already kind of touched you with that first point. You can then retarget them within Facebook and Twitter. They use both what they call custom audiences. So you can upload either an email list that you have from a form submission, or you can place tags on your website and then create audiences in Facebook and Twitter off of people that have hit certain pages. For instance, you can have sell and upsell to people that have hit your baseline consumer product, retarget them within Facebook to kind of buy that upgrade and that premium and get them that next step forward within Facebook and within Twitter there.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll ask both of you, and we'll decide who goes first in a second. How should businesses choose where they want to retarget? Should it be either just PPC or SEO or social, or all of them? Like, how do you make a decision when you're helping a business choose where to invest their money?
Yeah, and we, Sean, I'll kind of start here. We get that question often, especially at aimClear, where we kind of do both the search and the social sides for most of our customers. And it's really where your customers are, and it's based on your KPIs. So whatever you want to get out of a campaign or out of an initiative, you want to retarget, then where that's the most cost effective, where that's the most efficient, engagement rates are high, and then also where your audience is. So if your audience doesn't tweet, isn't active on Twitter, don't retarget them within Twitter. If they're really active on your Facebook profile and they interact with your page a lot, then retarget them on Facebook. And likewise with the search atmosphere, if you don't have a heavy social presence for your company, maybe sticking to search retargeting is kind of the best based on your KPIs and cost efficiency.
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback on that, I also wouldn't rule out necessarily any platform. You know, if we're talking about LinkedIn, there's hundreds of millions of users on LinkedIn. You know, the first quarter of 2015, Facebook has 1.44 billion, you know, active users. So, you know, even if your target isn't widely represented, there still may be enough for a small business to go after. But what Rachel's saying is absolutely right. Is you want to start with doing the market research and identifying, you know, what it is you're going after, you know, if to make that targeting easier. So if you're going after, you know, dog lovers for like a company like BarkBox, which is like monthly subscriptions, then Facebook is really good because that targeting matches up and you can target dog lovers. You know, people who donate to children's causes is a Facebook target. So Texas Children's Hospital, that makes sense. You know, someone who's recently engaged, promoting your wedding venue would make sense on Facebook. You know, LinkedIn offers very different targeting as well, as does AdWords. You know, if you're looking for people that are in market based on their search queries, then you're going to want to go to RLSA. So it really depends, yeah, on looking at your market research and figuring out who your market is. And any details about that market you can identify, and then what platforms provide that targeting.
Great, thank you. So based on what you both have said, do you think that retargeting is a good advertising option for any business?
Yeah, and I would say even, you know, in starting out, taking a step back, if you have a lot of traffic to your site, if you've got 100,000 visitors to your site, you can instantly create really large remarketing lists to then drill down into specific Facebook behaviors and interests. If you're a small business, if you're a competitive dog grooming company or whatever, the nature of your business is so specific, or even a dentist. A dentist is so specific. I haven't seen very many great dental blogs, so most people are going to a dentist's website, and that's self-identifying them as looking for a dentist, right? So for a small dentist, local dentist, anyone that visits your site, I would keep the targeting wide open at first to see how that converts for you, because, you know, there may not be a reason to cut that market up and segment that market out if you're dealing with a small, small set of uniques. So that's something to keep in mind, that you don't even have to go that far. You can just, on a really small business with a really specific product or service, you can keep that wide open, test it on all markets, AdRoll, AdWords, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, to see what works for you and what doesn't. It's going to be really cheap. It's pay as you go. So I'd recommend everyone definitely giving it a shot.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of Sean, like he said, testing is everything. And if you can test where your audience is and where they're engaging, you can start with $100 to $500 budget, so small businesses can absolutely enter the game and really discover, hey, is this the right solution for me? I can take $100 and I can test that engagement across maybe a well-established campaign that you've been running within Facebook for a while. But it's definitely one of those, especially within Facebook, and Twitter's come out with kind of their relevancy score a little more as well. But the more relevant you can get your audience to what you're advertising and what you're promoting, so your ad, however relevant that audience is, it's cheaper, it's shown more, Facebook favors it. They're all about the relevancy score right now, and so using retargeting lists only shows Facebook that you know who your audience is, because it's exactly who has already visited you and who likes you and who touches you. So using retargeting is a way to get cheaper engagement, and testing to make sure that that engagement is there is 100% the way to kind of test if retargeting is for you. And it doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It can be $100 and a week test, and you can know if it's for you.
Great, thank you. Okay, my next question for you is, so let's say a friend comes to you and they want to get into retargeting with their business. Do you feel that this is something they can learn to do on their own? And if so, what resources do you offer them to learn, or do you feel it's best to hire a consultant or an agency to help you with it?
I'll jump in here. What I would recommend is, some self-evaluation first. Even before you look into hiring someone in-house or an agency, is analytics or AdWords a challenge for you to use? And if so, then it may not be your cup of tea to use those platforms. AdRoll offers a very simple remarketing solution. Overall, they're basically the middle person between AdRoll and working with some of their ad exchanges, but also they plug into Google Display Network and others. But they represent 98% of all websites and web traffic, so it's a nice way. You may spend a little bit more, but it's a lot easier to it's harder to screw up. When it comes to some of the other platforms like Facebook and AdWords, you can try it yourself for sure. If you're doing a campaign that you just don't want to waste money on, or it's a bit more critical, or you're looking to spend thousands of dollars a month, you may want to look into finding somebody, because at the end of the day, the better the person is that manages your account, they pay for themselves. And then as far as agency versus in-house, it really depends on you as an individual. Do you want the responsibility of vetting that person and staying on top of that person, or do you want to hire an agency that sort of does that vetting for you? It's really a personal decision, but there's good and bad agencies, and there's good and bad in-house hires, so there's definitely not a clear-cut answer on that.
Yeah, it's also about, just being educated too. It never hurts, even if you are on the road to hire an agency or hire an in-house, to just make sure that you at least know the basics about retargeting. It's growing in strength, and both Facebook and Twitter on the social side are putting such a big emphasis on it. LinkedIn is releasing within certain beta spheres, and based on how much spend you have per quarter, are releasing some certain retargeting features with custom audience pixels on your website. So simply being educated is kind of the first step in knowing if you should hire an agency or an in-house, or if you should do it yourself. Getting in there, reading the different blog posts, going to Facebook, going to Twitter, and getting into their resources, because there are plenty that kind of give you that little overview. And once you can understand, all right, this is retargeting, then it's kind of a personal decision of, can I handle it? Should I test? If I test and it does wrong or doesn't do well, does that mean mean that retargeting is not for me, or does that mean that I need to hire an agency because maybe it wasn't the right step? First step is always education and making sure that you kind of understand the basics about it and can work your way through the platforms a little bit.
And Rachel, do you have like a recommendation of how people should educate themselves? Do they use like what the different networks provide as education, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great first step, is going straight to kind of the horse's mouth there and going straight to the Facebook blogs and help centers and the Twitter blogs and help centers. There's definitely sales reps for both Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn that'll help you kind of make those first moves. After those first couple moves, they get a little salesy and just want a little bit more money, but they're a great resource to kind of be a first touch in setting it up. There's a little bit of development involved in placing these custom audience pixels and conversion pixels, so making sure you have a dev resource. But education, starting with the channels and then moving outward. Agency blogs are really great. I know we at aimClear love retargeting. Marty speaks about it just about at every conference, about cookie pools and using search and social together. So then hitting up the agencies, and maybe you don't want to hire them, but they're great resources to learn from. And everyone's willing to talk about it because it's a really exciting thing. So first step, channels, get a hold of a sales rep, and then before they get too salesy on you and try to take all your money, hit up the agency blogs.
Great, thank you. And Sean, do you have any thoughts? Or did Rachel cover it?
Sean needs to unmute.
Uh-oh, hold on.
Is that better?
That's better. There you go. There you go.
So there's agencies, obviously like aimClear and PushFire, that do a great job, and this is going to sound kind of pitchy maybe, but it's really not. When you're running a business, you need to specialize in what you're good at and stick to what you're good at. I'm sure Chase, as a business owner, knows this. The more you try to learn everything, the less you're good at what you should be good at. So, if you're a baker, be the best baker. At some point, if your business is going to grow, you need to really dig into what you're good at. And if remarketing is not something that you have a knack for, I highly recommend passing it on to someone who will eat, sleep, and drink that all day. So just wanted to throw that out there. If anyone's in a situation where they feel like they have to learn so many things, again, passing that on to somebody who does a really good job on it can be more cost effective than the time you spend learning how to do it yourself.
Right. And I'm just going to say, you both work at agencies we trust. But we all know there's agencies out there that are not as trustworthy. So that education that Rachel kept stressing and understanding, so that you can follow along and understand what whoever you're working with, are they really doing their job? That's the best part of the education aspect. So thank you both. I think that really helps people. Next, I want to ask, because we know we have some people that are doing retargeting, what are some of the common mistakes that you all see on an everyday basis that could be avoided?
Yeah, I can jump in on the social side. We have people that come to us and say, hey, we want to enter this retargeting, and we've tried it and it didn't go well. And it's one of those, I think the way it can go bad within social is poor creative. So you can have the greatest, most perfectly curated audience in the world. You've retargeted people that have touched your website. You've layered on behaviors. You've layered on interests and demographics. But then your creative falls short and doesn't really capture those people. It doesn't entice that click. It's not a thumb stopper within social. So I think the first thing that we see go wrong is people just assume that the audience is going to get you everything. It's that two-pronged approach of making sure your creative is on point, your images are sharp and attention-grabbing, and that you're telling them what they want to hear, or at least asking them, hey, is this an issue for you? Let's solve it. Click on this ad. Using poor creative or the wrong copy is a lot of mistakes that we see because that audience, as perfect and curated and wonderful with intent as it is, that creative also needs to be on point to make sure that they'll entice that click.
Great, thank you. Sean, you have any thoughts? We muted you again.
Yeah, so we've seen some issues where just technical stuff where people get kind of setting experimental and don't realize the settings that they're changing. So one of them is bid only versus target and bid. That's something in AdWords where basically if you took like a Venn diagram of the websites you're targeting and the website you're targeting and the target you've put together, there is the Venn diagram where the overlap is what you're targeting, and then there's bid only where you're just targeting those placements that fit. So it's a much broader approach to go bid only, and you're sort of defeating the purpose of the targeting you've put together for remarketing if you're not doing target and bid. So for remarketing, it's target and bid. So that's a setting that we sometimes see awry. And then other than that, just having remarketing set up and properly so that they're they think they're doing shopping cart abandonment, but they're not. And it's hard to sort of test out that remarketing is working unless you act as the user and you have a fresh slate of cookies and you get on that list and then you experience that experience. It's kind of difficult to test. It's not like a form you can just fill out and see what happens. So you really want to make sure that it's set up properly and that quote unquote your burn pixels are actually burning people and removing them from your remarketing list. And if you do something like similar audiences, you want to make you have to remember that similar audiences may put people back into a remarketing list that you've maybe used a burn pixel to remove them. So it gets a little complicated there. Also, especially with Facebook, the custom audiences, using custom audiences as an exclusion. So if you're trying to push something that your product you're selling, but you have your customer list of people that have already purchased that product, then let's not sell them again, even if they match the targeting demographics, which they probably will that you've set up in Facebook. To make that cleaner, you can use your email list to basically exclude those people from seeing your ad. So I guess cleaning up the lists is something that I see pretty often, or lack of cleaning up the lists.
Yeah, to piggyback on that cleaning of the list, really watching your frequencies. Twitter's starting to roll out reporting on frequencies, which is fantastic and long overdue. But within Facebook, definitely watching to make sure, because sometimes those custom audiences can be on the smaller side. They're a great size, and we don't, when we advise on size of audience, we just say if it's the right audience, it's the right size. But sometimes it can be a little on the smaller side, so you want to make sure that if you've got a healthy budget, that you're not hitting people 10 times, 11 times. You make sure that you're staying within that sweet spot of between 2 and 5, because we've all seen that you hit something on Amazon and you come back to Facebook and every other ad you see is that same shirt, that same purse, that golf club, that golf ball, whatever it is. You see it a million times and then you're just annoyed and then you're not going to click on it. So definitely watching the delivery of it, frequency, the reach that you're getting, and shutting it off if it gets too much, because you don't want to be that person.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you all, and I think Sean touched on it. I really dislike going to an e-commerce site and buying something, and then going to CNN and Facebook, and the thing I bought keeps coming at me, and I'm like, you're wasting money, right? Because I already bought it from you. Is there a way for people to avoid that? Are they missing? Is that what what Sean was explaining?
Quick question though, did you click on it?
No.
Then it didn't cost them money.
Oh, it didn't cost. Okay, so only if I click on it is it going to cost. Okay.
I understand the frustration. I will say, we as marketers are way more annoyed at stuff than the average person. Okay. So we sometimes need to separate ourselves from the market and not assume that they think like we do, which is hard because what I think is right, and you assume other people think the same way. But for me, at the end of the day, figuring out what your impression cap should be really comes from the data. And instead of trying to make a gut feeling or look at the data and pull from the data where that drop off occurs. So for people like Melissa that get inundated with these products, now they may have screwed up and they shouldn't have put you kept you on that remarketing list. But let's say they're upselling you a product and they're just relentless with it. If that works for them and they sell more product, then I'm kind of more power to them because their data says it works. So for us to kind of take our individual experiences and extrapolate that and assume that's what's happening, we just can't do that because the data may or may not be saying something else. And if the data says that just slamming ads down people's throats nonstop converts more, I mean, it's like direct mail still exists, right? That's so annoying, but they would not be spending that money if it didn't convert. So I think that's just one of the unfortunate side effects of this advertising medium, and maybe we've kind of been spoiled by the lack of the specific targeting that they're capable of now, that it does seem a little bit creepy. But as a marketer, like as an individual, I'm a little creeped out, I agree. As a marketer, I love it. So there's that.
Wayfair.com stalks me, but they make me click. They make me click with different furniture and stuff, so they're doing a good job.
all the leopard prints and
all of it. It's just an addiction. But the next question I had for you was, what are the tools that you both use every day that you could not live without?
Oh, that's a good question. I know a lot of us on staff here use Buffer is really great. Probably one of the best out there. And then, as far as retargeting and tools there, a lot of people prefer ad roll, but I know that here at aimClear we do love just the native channels themselves. You have kind of the added benefit of I am kind of a data integrity junkie, and like Sean mentioned, leading with data. And if you analyze it and then use it, it's never gonna lie. I mean, Facebook may inflate their numbers a little bit, as we've seen lately with video views and such. And Twitter likes to say that they're better than Facebook. So there's a little bit of inflation war. But really going back to that native channel, I think, especially first starting out and making sure that you have that education and understanding. We love that native channel. Otherwise, Buffer is fantastic.
Yeah, some of the programs that we use, like in and around retargeting, maybe not retargeting specifically, but what runs where is very useful for us in identifying what competitors are using. So it lets us, it's kind of like SEMrush or SpyFu in competitive analysis, but it actually tells us the exact creatives that our competitors are using, and I can see the creatives they've used over the last 4 or 5 years, which is pretty cool because I can figure out that whatever creatives they stopped using probably didn't work very well, and the ones they continued using probably worked pretty well. So I sort of find that the ones that pass the test of time and use those to sort of shape and guide our strategy putting together our creatives, which for display remarketing is a big part of it. So SEMrush Optimizer.com is cool for evaluating some of the data and performances, and then we also prefer the native platform, so we're using a lot of like Google Scripts. I mean the rules and alerts that Google has built out and the detail of control you have through automation is pretty incredible. Yeah, that about sums it up. But there's a lot of stuff in AdWords you can use just within AdWords to do a lot of the things offered by some of the bid management tools.
Cool, great. Well, I have one more question for you before we get to audience questions. What is your top retargeting advice for businesses that are watching and wanting to get into it?
I think on the social side, number one, test it, do it, see if it works for you. Don't be afraid of it. It's one of those things that could seem really on the higher tech side, so you need to have a little bit of that development knowledge to get started in placing those pixels, but there's plenty of resources out there, and again, utilizing those Facebook reps and those Twitter reps to really help you start out. So just doing it is number one. Make sure that you're starting with education, and then after that, making sure that you're, as Sean mentioned earlier as well, leading with data and making sure that you're analyzing your campaigns, and if performance is right, keep doing what you're doing. And if you're seeing a frequency of 6 and 7 convert, make sure that you're running those campaigns to a frequency of 6 and 7 and making sure that the data is number one in your mind when running these campaigns.
Yeah, Rachel's dead on. That's my advice too. Is just do it. Jump in there. One of the things about remarketing is if you wanted to remarket tomorrow, you need lists in order to do that. So my biggest, what I would encourage people to do is to just start creating those lists. Figure out what lists make the most sense for you. One of the most obvious ones is shopping cart abandonment or lead abandonment or whatever it is. Someone comes to your site but does not convert or sign up for something. Create that list. And then when you're ready to promote something, you have that list available. So that's a big thing, whether it's in Bing and it's the UET codes or in AdWords, the remarketing code. You want to make sure that those lists are ready, so when you're ready to put together a campaign, you have that audience already. You have the audience to target.
Great, thank you.
So I have a question. I actually used to sell this stuff like 6 or 7 years ago when it was like really first coming out. But kind of some of the things that I saw. So I'm a huge believer, but I'd kind of like to hear you guys talk about the ROI or what to look for in terms of ROI, because I think there's a few different versions or a few different ways you can look at that. Like, even if it's not quote unquote working for you, I still think that there's value in the people that are visiting your site or whatever list you have set up. Seeing your brand, it's just another opportunity for you to get in front of them and to also keep them from seeing one of your competitors' ads, right?
Right.
So, in cases like what have you seen in terms of like a really good ROI in terms of I've spent X and made Y, but what happens when you don't really see that, and how do you talk about that with clients, and then what do you do? And then also, well, I guess we could start there.
Yeah. So as far as ROI, I get what it's kind of like the incremental value of remarketing, because I'll give you an example that formerly Copyblogger Media, now Rainmaker Digital, gave me permission to speak about at this conference this last week. We did a remarketing campaign with them where they gave us $5,000 to spend. The click conversions from that was $25,000 in revenue. The view-through conversions was $215,000 in revenue. Now, kind of what you're getting at, Chase, like I wouldn't give AdWords credit or remarketing credit for all 215,000 view-throughs.
Right.
But to some degree, this ad was a part of that conversion. So I don't know what degree each one of those views played in converting that person, but it was a part of that sale. So what I kind of do is I show the 215 and I show the 225, like click to conversions, and I say, look, these people clicked and converted. These people viewed and converted. 25 should justify the spend on its own, but we do need to factor in some degree of that 215 an attribution to that remarketing campaign.
Well,
what percentage? I couldn't.
Some people would even say like the 25. They would actually say it should be less than 25 because people, they would have came back anyways. I mean,
yeah.
I guess how do you and this is the whole multi-channel attribution problem, right? But so how do you approach that, and how do you do that in a way that is somewhat sophisticated but not like going to take 2 weeks of analysis to really figure out,
I say you take the whole campaign, because people say like, what's the cost of the lift? Like, what's the initial cost to put those people on the remarketing list? You can remarket to people that organically visited your site, right? But even that organic visit costs you money in content creation,
right?
Website hosting. So, it's complicated to get down to the actual, dollars and cents of that attribution. But you definitely touched on it. In analytics, you can do the multi-channel attribution modeling and make sure that you're putting UTM codes on all of your advertising to track, based on your business model and the attribution model you prefer. Some of our clients like first and last click, so it basically takes the first click and the last click and gives more credit to those. And depending on where remarketing is in that funnel, based on your tracking, it'll get more or less credit. They also do last click. Some clients are just whoever the last person that sold it, they get the credit. So the question is kind of what attribution model do you prefer?
Right, what do you prefer?
And once you pick one, then you make sure that you're tracking it properly to show true data so it's pulling it correctly. And that's the best answer I can give you.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I guess you guys just kind of hit it on the head with that multi-attribution models and however the client likes to look at it. We like that first and last click here, but that's one of the first things that we'll bring to the client when they say, all right, well, who's responsible for these conversions or these clicks? Because at aimClear we do a lot of promotion through social and then retargeting them in search, because we have a lot of clients that are in incredibly competitive spaces and their keywords in search are so expensive, $150. $100 clicks, and if we can curate that audience and already target it within social and get those cheap clicks through a good relevancy score and a great click-through rate and having Facebook and Twitter optimized to send the traffic that way and then retargeting them within search, we're lowering our cost per click and we can get $1 to $2 cost per clicks with retargeting and search from social versus that $150, making our ROI a lot greater and understanding our engagement through social. But showing the client that multi-attribution, that it takes a village to get that conversion, and we live in a space now where you need every channel, and you need to understand the behavior on every channel to really understand kind of the ROI of any initiative or campaign there.
Great, thank you. Well, Michelle, do we have some questions?
We do have a handful of questions. Jason Smith posted a question to the commentary thread before we even got started broadcasting, and I kind of want to lead off with this. He said he had a question specifically about Facebook retargeting and pricing. He's seen several people suggest that it's important to build a Facebook retargeting audience and run viral campaigns that build that audience. His brand particularly has a large audience in Facebook from uploading. So what he wants to know, is there a difference in cost when you run campaigns to a retargeting audience in Facebook instead of a very specific group of people who meet your criteria? Are there nuances in how that pricing model works?
Yeah, and I think first of all, that's a great question, Jason. Thank you for that. Saw that before we got started, and that's exciting. But it's an interesting thing going down to cost per click or cost per 1,000 impressions, and it really comes down to relevancy. Facebook's putting a huge premium on relevancy, so if you can get a relevancy score of 8, 9, 10, you're going to have a higher click-through rate, you're going to have a lower CPC, and like you're bringing to the front, the nuances between a targeted audience and then a retargeted audience that you've gathered through email lists or however you acquired that information, both are going to be highly relevant, it sounds like, which means you're going to have a lower cost per click, but Facebook is putting importance on retargeting, meaning they're going to show it for cheaper, paying attention to what the channels, what the shiny new object for each channel is. Video's taking a premium right now, so they're showing it at a much lower cost per view, but we've seen retargeting campaigns with much lower cost per engagements. We just ran one that completed last week where we had many different ad sets, all of which had relevancy scores in 8, 9s, and 10s, and the cost per engagement for the retargeted audience was about 4 cents, and the cost per engagement for the others were between 7 and 11 cents. And so it wasn't substantially lower, but lower enough that we saw greater engagement from that audience.
It's a good answer.
That's one.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, instead of, it's kind of like paralysis by analysis, just jump in and do it. Jump in and try both, and then he'll get his answer, because it's kind of hard for us to stand here and even take what we've done in the past and apply it to his niche and his market. I don't think there's an answer in every case for that. So I recommend that he test both out in a small scale. With remarketing, you can always test, and this kind of goes to any small business owner that's like looking at remarketing and feeling like it's a daunting task. Take a single city, and a few targets, and just try it out. So you don't have to go national targeting teachers or whoever you're targeting. You can start in just Houston or just Atlanta, or pick a city and test it out there, and then if it works, you can grow. So that would be my recommendation, is just test it out on a small scale. Instead of spending $1,000 on either one of them, do $500 on each in a small test sample and see how it goes.
Very
Great.
cool. Thank you so much. The question posted is fairly general, but it inspires a little bit of depth from me. So Michael Geiger posted, what is the best platform to use retargeting on? And I know we kind of hit this in the discussion already, but more importantly, because it does depend so much on each business's need, its size, its niche, all that kind of stuff. Would you guys be able to briefly kind of go over the features and pros that are available in some of these variations on retargeting, both in PPC and social?
Yeah, definitely. We love retargeting in Facebook more so than most other channels, just because of the cost per click and the cost per engagement. I think Sean mentioned it earlier. Don't shy away from any channel in particular until you've tried it. We like to say also that knowing where your audience is where you're going to want to retarget to them. But testing out, if you get email lists through your website, and testing out throughout Facebook and Twitter. But Facebook has some great options as far as layering targeting that outweigh any of the other platforms. They've partnered with just the right third-party data companies to really give you those behaviors. And layering on purchase intent or mobile use on any Facebook campaign or any retargeting campaign is going to make sure that you're grabbing really the people that are on that platform. Twitter has some layering options with interests and keywords, but not as much as Facebook does. And so that for us is the way, especially when we send social people to the site and then retarget and search. That's how we qualify those audiences, making sure that we can layer on those behaviors, those interests, those demographics, and showing the intent of those audiences, and then sending them to the website and retargeting from there. So I would say first and foremost, the targeting options within Facebook to layer those custom audiences and those behaviors is one of the best things about retargeting within social.
Yeah, definitely agree with all of that when it comes to Facebook. There's really not a better or worse. They're just different. They have different targeting options. There's a quote by David Ogilvy that I mentioned this last week, and it really nails it for me. So the quote is, "You aren't advertising to a standing army, you're advertising to a moving parade. The advertisement which sold a refrigerator to couples who got married last year will probably be just as successful with couples who get married this year. A good advertisement can be thought of as a radar sweep constantly hunting new prospects as they come into the market." Right? So I think of remarketing and even just social and search targeting as you're kind of setting these, for lack of a better term, traps for people. And the second that those targeting options connect, you've got them. So and there's a lot of overlap between Facebook and Google in a lot of ways, and Google's trying to become, they would love to have the targeting options that Facebook does, but they're trying to create that through the AdWords interface. So for me, it's just more important to start and kind of set those traps, set those remarketing lists and targeting options so that your ads will show to the right people, and be less concerned with, again, sitting there and trying to decide which one to use. Just use whichever one you're more familiar with, and get started. Because when it comes to remarketing, it's like remarketing in and of itself is so powerful that to me, it's not. I'd rather someone make a decision than not make a decision because they can't decide. So there's a way for it to work in AdWords. There's a way for it to work in Facebook. AdRoll simplifies it. Maybe costs a little more. You're not working with the native platforms, which again we're the same way. We like to use the native platforms, but it's a little easier and it's a little harder to screw up. So again, just get started. Just create your lists, whether it's Facebook or AdWords, and just start remarketing to see how it'll work, because we've never, any remarketing campaign that's set up correctly always performs better than generic targeting. We see anywhere up to 60% decrease in cost per click, and it's never a more expensive cost per click if it's set up properly. So I would just encourage everyone to get started one way or the other.
I will mention too that now we can retarget Instagram users in Facebook. And when that was released a couple of weeks ago, there was a collective kind of scream and ooh and ah across the office here. And at aimClear we have open offices, so it was quite loud, but it was exciting. So you can target Instagram users using your Facebook targeting. So any of that information, Jason in the comments had mentioned he had a pretty lengthy email list. See if they're on Instagram. Coming up on the holiday season, Black Friday, it's not too soon to talk about it if you're a marketer or if you're a company, selling that consumer product. So retargeting your Facebook audiences within Instagram is going to be, I think, huge coming up.
Nice.
Yep.
I have a follow-up question, if you guys don't mind. Chase had asked specifically about the ROI, and we talked a little bit about attribution and that kind of thing, but I want to take a slight step backwards and remember that everything that we do in digital marketing, whether it's search, content, social, paid placement, none of it happens in a vacuum. What we do over here affects something else that goes on over here. My question to you guys is, how does this retargeting activity provide additional search lift? So we know we're getting repeat visitors. We're getting people to come back to things that they've already said that they're interested in. What does this do for our SEO and some of our more broader organic digital marketing?
Yeah, definitely any amount of paid promotion is going to give you an organic lift. We've seen with one of our clients that we've been working with since November, we send promotions to their blog, which then refers to their main company site. And on that main company site, they've seen an 11% lift in organic sessions and new users. And that new users is key. And for a company of the size that we're working with, 11% is huge. So any time that you can get qualified traffic to your site, Google's going to reward you, and they're going to rank your pages higher and show that your site has higher authority and improve your SEO on your page. You can't ignore it just by doing paid promotion and say like, oh well, it'll be better because I'm sending paid to it. Nope, you need to have an eye on both. But we are definitely here at aimClear of the thought that any paid promotion you're sending to your site is only going to give you an added organic benefit as long as your SEO is in place on your site as well.
Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't call it I wouldn't consider it a direct correlation, but definitely indirect. Some of the things that occur from your advertising are giving signals to search engines that your website is of more value and could potentially rank you higher. I would say that they don't claim there's any direct correlation, and I haven't seen anything that I could say was directly correlated. But my wife has a blog an affiliate blog that she put together, which is she's basically doing no link building for it. It's purely a social play, and it's Facebook and Pinterest is what she's pushing all of her promotions on. So she's done, she's spent quite a bit on building Facebook. So her traffic is coming from Facebook and Pinterest, but she is organically ranking #1 for terms without doing any direct link building. So, and the whole point of that was she was testing out, what happens if you don't directly link build, but all of your signals are coming from social. So indirectly, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a bump of all that social traffic heading to your website. Google has to account for that in order to rank websites appropriately. So, I wouldn't claim to know anything in particular about there being any direct correlation, but we've seen some indirect correlations.
Great. And one other question I had for you all is, we see it's getting more and more difficult to do well in search, with the snack pack and Google's. To me, Google's becoming a paid search engine as a whole. So for businesses that are having a hard time ranking, this is really the best or a great option for them to get out there. Am I wrong? I mean, we're kind of being forced into this direction. If you don't already have established ranking and you're new to the game, in a industry, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that that's the nature of the beast, right? I feel like what you used to not have to pay for, you now have to pay for or work harder to get. Facebook originally was organic. Your organic reach reached a high percentage of your audience. Now it's a very small fraction of your audience, and you have to pay to play. So while you need all the SEO on your site and everything, on-site SEO in place, there's just more signals out there that you need to attract, including social. And if you don't have any traffic to your site, then you need some paid traffic for Google to have any idea how to evaluate your site. So yeah, I mean, it's not in a vacuum, and there's a lot of parts that play into it. And I feel like, if your budget was 50% paid before, it may need to be 55% paid now. So it's just the nature of the beast that you sometimes, I mean, nothing's free, right? Like your time spent learning something or doing something is going to cost you money. So if you're forced, for example, on Facebook to pay to get the attention of your audience, you were sort of living on rented space before, and you weren't paying rent. So now you've got to pay rent. Yeah, that's the best I can say on that. Is you just have to adapt to the changes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And making sure that kind of every channel that you are playing on, you're being cognizant of what you're doing on other channels. With search being a lot more expensive and a lot more people kind of entering the game that didn't previously because they have to now, with all the hits that certain sites have taken. It's more expensive, and you need to be a little bit more creative about how you reach your audience if you don't have that incremental budget, and it's fixed on a monthly, and you're paying more but you're getting less. Making sure that you can do creative things like targeting in social and then retargeting in search for a cheaper click. Making sure that you can understand the space enough, or reaching out to an agency to help understand, to say, all right, it's costing me more and more, so what are these tricks and these hacks that I can pay less per click and still find that intentional audience and that targeted audience.
Great, thank you. Well, before we go, I wanted to see, are there any conferences you all are speaking at this year, or where people can meet you?
Yeah, I will be doing the social workshop at SMX Social this year. So that's exciting. In November, out in Las Vegas. Mary Morud and I, she's also kind of a social goddess extraordinaire. We'll be doing a all-day workshop on both creative within the social space, and then I will be doing kind of my main point on reporting and analytics. And judging performance on your social campaigns.
Great.
Which conference is that for? You said November.
SMX Social.
aimClear also has some representation at PubCon, yes?
Yes, and we have a few that are speaking at SEJ in New York, and I believe at PubCon we have, oh, I should know, we have a workshop, and I think Marty is speaking.
Yeah.
If not Marty, then yeah, Marty's speaking.
Marty's speaking. Yep.
He kind of flies around. Keeping track of that guy's schedule is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to say that Marty is one of the best speakers. So if you are going to a conference he's at, don't miss his session. I don't care what the topic is. Even if it's something you don't do, you'll learn something cool.
And
at least he's really entertaining. He's
and my
awesome.
recommendation at Marty's sessions is don't even try to live tweet it. You cannot type that fast.
Impossible.
Put your hands down and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to be speaking at State of Search. I had to Google it here. They are in November 16th this year, State of Search in Dallas. One of my favorite conferences to go to. It's such a cool group there in Dallas. And then we've got SearchHou, SearchHou meetups that we do here in Houston, usually the third Wednesday of every month. And the next meetup, we're talking about referral spam and protecting your website from hacks in general. So anyone local, feel free to come out to that. It's a good time.
Nice. Gee, Sean, that's like getting stuff for free. Okay, so if you want to find Rachel on Twitter, she is at Duluth Rachel, and it is Rachel, and Sean is _Sean Dolan. That's how I find you every time. I just put underscores on.
I can't get at Sean Dolan to sell it. He's tweeted like 9 times. Such a jerk. Yeah.
But you're more unique. It's like, and Sean Dolan. So it's fine.
Alphabetically, I'm at the top. So
all right, there you go. But we thank you so much, both of you, for your time and expertise, and we think our audience has probably learned quite a bit from it. We are going to be, or Michelle is going to be creating a podcast and a recap for our Hangout. Our next Hangout will be 2 weeks from today, and it will have members of our team discussing how to survive and manage PubCon Las Vegas for October. So we want to thank everyone for watching, and again, Rachel and Sean, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa, Jason.